Hey mandolin friends, we're back for another fiddle tune tutorial lesson, and if you're a longtime follower of the channel and of the Mandolin Mondays series, then you might recognize this one from the very first installment of that weekly video series. It's a pretty old video, but this tune is even older than that, right? It was written in the 1970s by the late great Byron Berline of Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys. And Byron wrote this when he was playing in his band, the Country Gazette, and they recorded it on a record called Don't Give Up Your Day Job, which is a fantastic name for a record. Huckleberry Hornpipe is a really fun advanced bluegrass fiddle tune. It has 3 parts. It's in the key of A major. I'm going to show you a version of the melody that I know here, and I want to walk you through that solo that I played in that very first Mandolin Mondays video. And throughout this video, we're going to be working with this PDF transcription. You can download it at the link below over on my Patreon page, as well as some backing tracks and other helpful learning resources, but you don't have to go anywhere because the tab, the transcription, and those recordings are going to be throughout this video so you can learn it right here. And when you're ready, grab your mandolin because we're going to dive right in and learn these chords first. And the chords here are pretty simple. We actually only have 3 chords in this tune. You probably already know these, but just to review, we have our open A, open D, and lastly your open E chord. And since this is a bluegrass tune, you might want to use those chop chords at your bluegrass jam when you're playing this one. Let's learn those chop shapes as well. A, D, and E. Let's check out the chord progression while we're here as well. Like I mentioned, this is a 3-part fiddle tune. Starting with the A section, we're going to be on an A chord for 2 measures. Then going to a D chord. Then we're going to be on an E chord for 3 measures. Before getting back to an A chord for 1 measure. That section repeats before moving on to the B section here, which is a little bit different. We're going to be starting on a D chord and changing every measure here. So we have D going to an A, up to an E, back to an A. That repeats. So D, A, E, A. Then of course we're going to repeat that B section before moving on to the C part, and then when you get to the C, you're going to notice that these are the exact same chords, exact same progression that we had in the A section, so you already know this as well. So I'll leave it up to you to practice these, get comfortable with them before we move on to the melody here. So let's get this melody back in our ears now. Let me play through all 3 parts from start to finish, and then we'll get started. There's a lot of notes there, but we're going to break things down into 2-measure phrases and take it bit by bit, starting with this first chunk. So first we have this 3-beat pickup measure, which is a little bit longer than some fiddle tunes. Then when we get to this first full measure, we're playing around with some kind of cross-picking, string-hopping ideas over your A major chord. And then we have this crazy cool octave jump from the open A string to the high A on your 5th fret of your E string there at the end of this phrase. For this next 2-measure phrase, we're playing over a D chord now. Mostly dealing in D major arpeggio notes here. The one thing to watch out for is the hammer-on triplet towards the end. We're doing a down for the first 2 notes, up on the 3rd, so we can get back to a down on the next note. Here we go together now. Then the next two measures, we're on an E major chord and we're playing a lot of E major chord tones. Check this out. There's a little bit of shifting going on here to avoid having to use our pinky on that hammer-on triplet. So what I'm doing is using that open E string at the end of the first measure as an opportunity to shift my index finger up to the 4th fret. And then I'm fingering most of the rest of the phrase up here, before playing my pinky on the 7th fret at the very end to get back in position for the rest of the phrase. And then here's that last phrase. Here we have a couple of hammer-on triplets in succession. First here on the 2nd and 4th frets of your A string, and then afterwards we're hopping up with our ring finger up to the 7th fret, again to avoid using our pinky on that hammer-on triplet. And those last 3 notes of the first ending are leading you back to the beginning of the melody again for the repeat, but for now we're going to end on that open A, and let's try this phrase together. All right, now it's your turn to stitch those 4 phrases together. We're going to try playing through this A section once with that backing track. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, here in the B section, we have some even more obvious arpeggio pattern is going on. Check this out. So here we have a D arpeggio at the beginning, walking up and back down to an A arpeggio. Then we're just swapping up the order of the tones there at the end. Here's the next phrase. Starting over this E chord, we have an E arpeggio, a hammer-on triplet there, and then we're just walking up your A major scale, hopping up to the high A like we did in the A section. The next 2 measure phrase is exactly the same as the first 2 measures of the B, so you already have this. And then the next phrase here is very similar to the second phrase at the B section, starting out the same way, just ending a little bit differently. We're using that same trick from the last measure on the A section, right? Where we're using the open A string as an opportunity to hop up with your ring finger up to the 7th fret, so you don't have to use that pinky on the hammer-on triplet. Here we go together. And like before, those last 3 notes of the first ending here lead you back to the beginning. But for now, let's see if we can just play through all 4 of those phrases once. Here's the B section with that backing track and transcription on screen. All right, one more section to go. Let's check out the C part now, and this one involves some fun shifting up the neck. Here's the first 2 measure phrase. We got some A arpeggios here at the beginning, and then using some open A's as a way of shifting up the neck, having your index finger now on the 4th fret, that's where we're gonna finger the second measure. Still using your open A, but otherwise staying in this new territory. Let's try it out. And this next phrase goes even higher up the neck. So we're still using our open D string here at the beginning, index on the 4th fret, open A, using that as an opportunity to shift even higher. Now with your index finger on the 5th fret, we're gonna finger the rest of the phrase up here. Take your time with this one, but when you're ready, it goes like this. Then we're using that last note, the open A string on the previous phrase, to shift back down to your index finger now on the second fret of the D string for the third phrase. And by now you've probably noticed that the last line of the C part here is exactly the same as the last line of the A section, so this is all familiar material as well. Try it with me here. And that last phrase is the same as well. All right, I think you're ready. Let's try that C part once through together. Well, now we have the fun part of putting all three parts together with the repeats and see if we can make it through the whole tune from start to finish. I think you have this. When you're ready, let's try it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, that's the tune, and next step would be to memorize this one. If you want to stop here and work on your own variations and your own solos for this one, you're more than welcome to. But for the rest of this video, we're going to check out this solo that I wrote for that Mandolin Mondays video, and it goes like this. Again, you can grab that PDF and the backing tracks for this one over on Patreon. We're going to take this a little bit faster and do 4 measures at a time, starting with this first 4-measure phrase. So just a 3/8 note pickup here, and when we get to the beginning of this 4-measure phrase, you can hear the melody outlined, but we're playing a different arpeggio device to communicate it, right? So here we're playing an A arpeggio from A to A, then an A arpeggio from E to E, and then from C sharp to C sharp, before hopping up to your A. Still have that high A hop like we did in the original melody, and then we're doing a similar arpeggio device for your D major chord. Before getting back to the melody at the end of that phrase there. Let's try that together. on these next 4 measures, we get a little bit further away from the melody. Starting off with the melody for this E major arpeggio. Then we're shifting a little bit sooner, getting to that 7th fret before the downbeat of the next measure so that we can do this chromatic walk down on the 2nd measure. Shifting back down on the last note of the 2nd measure, and now we're playing kind of a 3rds scale pattern before breaking that pattern on the last measure. That's a lot, but let's try that together. The 3rd line of our solo for the A section does kind of some weird stuff here. Check this out. So we're just starting off with a high A and an open E string, but from there we're playing doubles of every note that we're playing, and we're doing this octave effect to create this interesting sound. So A, G sharp, and then we're hopping up to the G sharp on your E string, F sharp, and then we're hopping down to the F sharp on your D string, down to your E, hopping up to your high E string, D, now down to your open D, C sharp. Then from there, we're doing a chromatic walk up from your open D, E flat, E, F sharp, G. Let's take that slow, but when you're ready, try it with me. And then the last line of the solo for the A section sounds like this. So we're finally resolving this chromatic run from the previous phrase on the 6th fret, the G sharp here at the beginning of the next phrase. And then we're doing kind of this fun, weird pattern. Playing a hammer-on triplet to finally get back to the original melody for the last 2 measures. With just a little bit of a chromatic descending run there at the end to get us to the B section. Here we go. Well, that's a lot of material already. Before moving on to the B section, let's see if we can get through that whole solo for the A section, those 4 4-measure phrases from start to finish. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. On the B section, we're playing stuff that sounds very similar to the melody with some slight variations. Check it out. Not too bad, right? Try that with me. Similar idea for the next 4 measures here, but now we're taking those arpeggios and superimposing a unit of 3 over them to offset the resolution a little bit. Sounds like this. It's almost like a banjo roll, right? Same idea for the A chord. And then we just get back to the melody here for the E. We are doing a little bit of a chromatic run there at the end that will resolve in the next phrase, but for now, let's try this 4-measure phrase together. Now we're getting a little bit further away from the melody with this third 4-measure phrase. So here on the second note of the phrase, we're doing an upstroke slide from the 5 to the 9 on the A string, and then we're camping out here for the next few notes. Chromatic walk up, shift down, and then from there we're playing an interesting idea over an E chord, arpeggio, and then a scale pattern dealing with the flat 7, the G natural, which is leading us to the 4 chord on the next line. And then on the last line of the B section here for the solo, we're taking the melody down an octave and playing a variation of the tune here. Not too bad for the D chord here, right? Then when we get to the A chord, I think it's easier to bar down with your index finger across the 2nd fret on the G and the D strings. Then we're going to shift back down for the E chord, use our index finger on the 1st fret, ring finger on the 4th fret. Using your ring finger to slide with an upstroke slide from the 4 to 6. Before walking down to the low A. And we're going to use this G natural, G sharp walk up to resolve on the next phrase. Oh my goodness, you're doing so well. Let's see if we can play this last phrase of the B here. We're getting so close to the end here. Before we move on, let's see if we can play through that whole B section for the solo from start to finish. Good luck. All right, the C part for our solo starts out really wacky here. Check this out. So we're starting off with this wacky lick that I like to do sometimes, where you're playing an arpeggio for your root chord, A major here, and then you're playing an arpeggio, a tritone above the root, which would be E flat arpeggio. Then you're playing an A major arpeggio again, an octave higher, E flat arpeggio. Pretty weird, right? And then we're resolving that to your D chord with this hammer-on triplet. Doing it again, walking up to your B flat and G natural chromatically, and then finally shifting up to your B natural there for the next phrase. Carrying on to the next phrase. That's the last hard one, I promise. Another hammer-on triplet here with your index finger on the 4th fret. Then we're using that next open E string as a chance to shift even higher up the neck. Index on the 7th fret. D sharp leading up to the E. And then we have a shift here down to your A note with your middle finger. Shifting again on the open E string. Little chromatic run before we finally get down to the A and the next phrase. Okay, we got this. Check this out. I thought it might be nice to get back to the original melody at the end. So the last 2 4-measure phrases here are exactly the melody. So you already know this. Try it with me. only difference are those last 3 notes where we're walking up to the tag lick at the very end, which I'll show you right here. Which isn't that tough, right? We're just playing a similar version to the original melody at the beginning for the first 2 measures of the tag, and then we're playing a little bit of a bluesy lick at the end to finish it out strong. Let's try it with me here. All right, time to try that whole C part with the tag at the end. When you're ready, let's give it a shot. You guessed it, now it's time to try the whole solo from start to finish. Goodness, it's a lot, but let's try it out anyways. Have some fun with it. Here we go. Well, if you made it this far in the video, then here are some even additional next steps that you can take with this tune. After you have it memorized, the first thing I would try to do is mash the melody and the solo together. That's what I did on that Mandolin Mondays video. You can check it out here in the cards above. Another next step would be to work on the tempo here. You may have noticed that video is played at a pretty fast clip, right? Faster than we worked on here. Sometimes this tune is played pretty fast at the Bluegrass Jams. So you can use your metronome or use those backing tracks over on Patreon and pair with maybe the amazing Slowdowner app as a way of speeding up the recording and working on your tempo here. And then bonus round here, for the last next step, I challenge you to write your own solo for this tune, just like I did here for that Mandolin Mondays arrangement. And if you've never done that before, I know it can be a bit scary, but check out this video here on screen where I'll walk you through my process on solo writing in a bit more detail. And you can check out some of the other fiddle tune tutorials here on the channel. Subscribe, join us over on Patreon, and just a huge shout out to all the patrons over there for making these videos possible. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.